It's crunch time as Malawians will go to the polls amid a number of challenges facing the country, such as inflation, fuel shortages and corruption. There are over 7 million registered voters and 17 presidential candidates.
My people, this week, Malawi, one of Africa's smallest nations, is about to stage one of the continent's biggest democratic tests of the year. This is not just another election. The economy is collapsing, corruption is suffocating hope, and just last year, the country lost its vice president in a plane crash that still haunts the nation. On top of that, 2 former presidents are back in the race, trying to reclaim power. On September 16th, Malawians will cast their votes for president, parliament, and local councils all on the same day. And what's at stake is not just who wins power, but whether ordinary people still believe democracy can actually deliver in Africa. Because here's the backdrop. In 2020, Malawi made history when the courts threw out a fraudulent election and forced a rerun, making it the first time in Africa that a court-overturned election resulted in the defeat of a sitting president. That's right, that decision was a bold reminder that people's voices matter. But here's the question. Will 2025 prove that hope was real or expose it as an illusion? Today on The Breakdown, we're looking into the stakes of this election, the contenders and their legacies, the crises shaping the vote, and the bigger question, will democracy win again? But before we break it down, please do me a favor and subscribe to our channel and tap the notification bell for alerts. And if you enjoy this video, like, share, drop a comment, and a super thanks, and join our membership for more exclusive. Also, we're hosting our annual conference in New York City this November, and I'd love to invite you to join us. Visit BlackStarsExperience.com to learn more and register. All right, now, let's start with the basics. On September 16th, Malawians head to the polls. But no, this is no ordinary vote. In one single day, citizens will choose a president, 193 members of parliament, and more than 400 local councillors. That's a massive democratic exercise for a country of just 21 million people. And here's a kicker. What happens in Malawi doesn't just stay in Malawi. It ripples across the continent because this small nation has already proven that it can punch above its weight when it comes to democracy. In 2020, Malawi made history when its constitutional court annulled a fraudulent election and ordered a fresh vote, something almost unheard of in Africa. And when the rerun happened, Malawians flipped the script. The opposition won, and a sitting president was sent packing. It was a democratic miracle that inspired the world. Now fast forward to 2025, and the stakes couldn't be higher. This election is about one big question. Was that miracle the beginning of something new or just a one-time fluke? Malawi today is a country battered by economic collapse, corruption scandals, and the shocking death of its vice president last year. For many citizens, the election isn't about grand political promises. It's about whether democracy can still feed them, protect them, and give them hope.
Experts say this is likely to be a 2-horse race between incumbent President Lazarus Chakwera and former President Peter Mutharika. Chakwera has pledged to complete his infrastructure development.
Before we can begin to rebuild, we must clear the rubble of corruption, for it has left our taxes in ruins. We must clear the rubble of laziness, for it has left our infrastructure in ruins. We must clear the rubble of passivism, for it has left our rights in ruins. We must clear the rubble of donor dependency, for it has left our dignity in ruins.
Former President Peter Mutharika wants to return to the State House. In his campaign, he is committed to prioritizing the country's economy, but some are concerned about his fitness to lead.
It's a very, very important responsibility. It shows that people have power. But in the end, it's the people who decide who is going to run this country. So very, very important. Everyone should vote. And nobody should get discouraged.
The country's first female leader, Joyce Banda, also wants to come back. She's counting on the women and youth vote.
That's the more reason why this initiative should move aggressively with the same countries. Because African countries are saying, we're not looking for charity. We understand and we are ready to fight, to build our capacities in our countries, to move our economies. But for that to happen, we need a debt relief first.
And that brings us to the contenders. Who are the people vying to lead Malawi at this very critical moment? And do they actually represent change or just more of the same mess? Let's break that down. First, President Lazarus Chakwera of the Malawi Congress Party. He's a preacher turned politician who rode the wave of the 2020 return to power. Back then, he was the face of hope, the man who promised to sweep away corruption and rebuild Malawi's democracy. But 5 years later, many say he's failed to deliver. The economy is worse, corruption cases drag on, and frustration is just boiling over. He's running for re-election, but he carries the heavy baggage of unmet expectations. Then there's Peter Mutharika, the 85-year-old former president from the Democratic Progressive Party. He ruled from 2014 to 2020 before being ousted in that historic rerun. His supporters say that he brought stability and stronger economic management. But critics remember him for corruption scandals and poor governance. And let's be honest, at 85, with rare public appearances, questions about his health and stamina hang heavy over his campaign. Now, there are 15 other candidates on the presidential ballot, including former President Joyce Banda. But experts expect the election to come down to a two-way battle between Mr. Chakwera and Mr. Mutharika. So the choice between Malawians looks like this. You stick with Chakwera, bring back Mutharika, or take a chance on leaders who claim to represent a new chapter. But when so many of these names are recycled, it raises the question, is this really change or just a remix of the same old playlist?
The donor-dependent Southern African country is one of the poorest in the world. It's been hit by natural disasters. Malawi made history when the Constitutional Court nullified the election results in 2020 due to irregularities and called for a rerun.
And that's where the real story kicks in. Because this election isn't happening in a vacuum. It's happening against the backdrop of a collapsing economy, corruption fatigue, and a nation in mourning. This isn't just about politicians trading promises. It's about survival in a country on the brink. Let's start with the economy. Malawi is one of the poorest nations in the world. But in the last 2 years, things have gone from bad to worse. Cyclone Freddy in 2023 wiped out crops and homes. Then came a devastating drought. The result, soaring food prices, empty shelves, and millions of families pushed deeper into poverty. And the USAID freeze hit Malawi hard. This funding made up over 13% of the national budget, and its suspension has disrupted healthcare, education, and other critical services. Foreign exchange has also dried up, meaning companies can't import fuel or medicine. The currency has been devalued multiple times, and power outages, some lasting half the day, have left businesses paralyzed and homes in the dark. So for the ordinary Malawian, it feels like the government has lost control of the basics. And then there's corruption, the issue that just never goes away. President Chakwera campaigned on cleaning up the mess, but 5 years in, many say he's just added more of the same. Investigations into high-profile figures get dropped. The Anti-Corruption Bureau has been leaderless for over a year. And the Catholic Church itself has openly accused the government of failing in its duty to fight graft. What about the opposition leaders? Well, they're not much better. Mutharika still faces questions about bribes during his time in power. And Joyce Banda, well, she's remembered for Cashgate. So for voters, it just feels like a carousel of leaders where everyone has dirty hands. And looming over everything is tragedy. Vice President Saulos Chilima, a man seen as the future of Malawian politics, especially by the youth, died in a plane crash in June 2024. Officials said it was an accident, but many Malawians still whisper about foul play, pointing fingers at a political system that they don't trust. His death left not just a leadership vacuum, but a psychological scar. For the youth, it felt like their one real champion was slipped away. And in an election where young people make up the majority of voters, yes, that matters. So here's the truth. This election isn't just about picking a president. It's about whether any of these candidates can convince a wary, skeptical, and struggling population that they have a real plan, that they can deliver food, jobs, light, and hope. My people, democracy is not just about casting a ballot. It's about believing that ballots will be counted fairly. And in Malawi, that belief is starting to crack. The Electoral Commission is supposed to be the referee, but opposition parties and civil society say that the referee is already wearing the ruling party's jersey. Several commissioners are accused of being too close to President Chakwera's party, the MCP. That raises doubts about whether the field is level before a single vote is cast. And then there's intimidation. In June, protesters demanding the resignation of the Election Commission's chairperson were attacked. Not just harassed, but hacked at by masked men wielding machetes. Think about that. Citizens calling for transparency met with violence in broad daylight. It's a chilling signal that fear is being used as a political weapon. But let's not forget, Malawi has done the impossible before. In 2020, it was the courts, civil society, and ordinary citizens who defended democracy against fraud. So that legacy still inspires hope. But the question is, do Malawians still believe lightning can strike twice? Or has the system learned how to crush resistance before it grows? But zoom out, and this is bigger than Malawi. Across Africa, 2025 is full of elections, from Burundi to Cote d'Ivoire to Tanzania and Guinea-Bissau. And the same question looms. Can democracy survive the pressures of corruption, intimidation, and distrust? So as we head into September 16th, Malawians aren't just voting for leaders. They're voting for the very idea of democracy itself. The outcome will send a message, not just to Lilongwe, but to the entire continent. And you know, we'll be watching and breaking it down. That's it for today's show. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Sandra Babu-Boateng, and until next time, take care.